I know you're probably waiting for a cheesy joke or something like that. But read the smile, guys. Having things that I love being resurrected kinda has a way of taking all the snark out of me. Don't worry though, I'm sure I'll find something. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Tales Showcase, where after 3.5 years of begging, pleading, petitioning, fan arting, screaming, yelling, kicking, raging, and appealing, we finally got Young Justice back! Oh, right. I'm your host, the Watcher of New Earth. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's true. After being prematurely cancelled in 2013, Young Justice being brought back for a third season. And, this being Animation Month, it seems like the appropriate time to discuss Young Justice Season 1. Loosely based on the comic series of the same name, Young Justice revolved around a group of young heroes who traditionally are considered sidekicks. The main cast consisted of Robin, Kid Flash, Aqualad, Miss Martian, Artemis, and Superboy, with numerous other heroes making appearances and new characters joining the roster later in the season. This is my first time covering something this big.
That's what she said!
So I'm going to approach it a little differently. I'm going to breeze through the season-long story, and then give an overview on each character. And, while this should be implied, this is an official spoiler warning. And with all that said, let's dig into Young Justice Season 1. The story begins on the 4th of July as Robin, Kid Flash, Aqualad, and Speedy are being prepared to be inducted into the Justice League. They arrive at the Hall of Justice to massive press coverage, and the three of the sidekicks seem pretty happy. Speedy, however, quickly gets ticked off as he sees that the other heroes are going to the real headquarters, a giant orbiting satellite, and leaving the sidekicks in the dummy base. Roy, Speedy's real name, angrily calls it quits with Green Arrow and storms off. Green Arrow, polarizing sidekicks in every universe. The other young heroes have their fair share of questions too, but before they can be asked, an emergency breaks out and the League is forced to leave. While they're gone, the teens find out that there's a fire at Project Cadmus, and they decide to go help. Robin, knowing that Batman has wanted to inspect this place for a while, decides to do some snooping. After they put out the fire, they stumble upon what appears to be the real Cadmus, an underground lab filled with mutant creations called Genomorphs. That pales, however, when they find what appears to be a clone of Superman. They manage to free the captive clone, and after a destructive fight, they meet up with the League. This leads to an awkward standoff between Superman and his clone. How awkward? That's like going to a costume party and seeing someone with the exact same costume on. Except worse because, it's their face. With the resounding success of their first mission, the League decides to create a covert team consisting of the young heroes. Martian Manhunter also decides to add his niece, Megan Morse, to the roster. The superhero equivalent of you having a party with all your friends, and your mother inviting that neighbor kid that you didn't know existed. Taking on the mantle of Miss Martian, Megan joins the team at their new base in a cave in Happy Harbor, Rhode Island, which was an old base of the League's, just like it was in the comics. Red Tornado is appointed as their caretaker. Because they assumed, hey, Tornado's a robot, he must have nothing to do. Despite not having an official leader, the team does pretty well on its first few outings, even taking on such heavy hitters as Bane and Amazo. They even offer Roy, now going by Red Arrow, a spot on the team, but he declines. Instead, the role of Team Archer goes to Green Arrow's new apprentice, Artemis. For God's sake, you got rid of one 2 weeks ago and you have a new one? You're worse than Batman! Now, with a fully rounded out team, and with Aqualad as their leader, the team goes on several missions, ranging from recovering the helmet of Dr. Fate to infiltrating Belle Rev while disguised as the Terror Twins. While most of these missions seem unrelated, unbeknownst to the team, they are all mostly connected to an organization known as the Light, who believe that metahumans are preventing humanity from evolving. Men who run faster than time, intergalactic space cops with killer jewelry, Amazonian warriors, and people who train to their peak strength and keep it up for a prolonged period of time. Yeah, sure doesn't sound like humanity's evolving. Early on, the team suspects that there is a mole amongst them. The blame shifts often, but the two biggest suspects had been Artemis and Red Tornado. However, at the end of the season, it's revealed to have been Red Arrow, who actually isn't Roy Harper, but rather a clone of the original who was created by Cadmus, like Superboy, and programmed by the Light to be a sleeper agent. Of course. At the season finale, Roy, having been inducted to the League, helps the Light mind control the League with the use of tech based on Starro, another of the League's villains. With the League out of commission, it's up to the team to save the day. Together with Roy and new members Zatanna and Rocket, they are able to defeat the League's controllers and enjoy a victory celebration just as the new year arrives. And the season ends with Robin revealing that 6 League members can't be counted for, as they disappeared for 16 hours during their mind control. Obviously, this is a shorthand of the story. The actual story is more immersive and gripping, with subtle foreshadowing and amazing action sequences. I just really don't have the time to cover it. Now, however, I'd like to take a closer look at the characters. Let's start off with Robin. Unlike in the Young Justice comics where Tim Drake held the mantle, the show decided to go with Dick Grayson, the first and arguably most popular version of Robin. Not only does this make more sense timeline-wise, as this show takes place in a universe where superheroes are relatively new, but Dick has constantly shown that he is more than capable of being a leader of a team. Despite this, Dick does not take leadership at once, preferring instead to be their strategist. This sets him apart from his mentor, who assumes authority, and prevents him from just being a Batman clone. If I had to say that Robin had a story arc in the season, it'd probably be setting himself apart from his teacher, by learning to trust people. For example, in the beginning, when they first start on the team, everybody reveals their secret identities to one another, except Dick. I mean, sure, he only hides it behind a pair of sunglasses, but mistrust is mistrust. And by the end of the season, you can see that he's grown comfortable around his teammates and has learned to trust them. Aqualad has the opposite problem. Like his mentor, Kaldur is a natural leader, but unlike his mentor, he has some reserve about being team leader. Throughout the season, we're allowed to see Aqualad become more confident in himself, and he proves to be a pretty kick-ass leader. Kaldur'ahm was a completely new character, created specifically for the show. Jeff Johns, a bigwig over at DC, really took a liking to the character and decided to introduce him into the mainstream continuity beginning in Brightest Day. DC rebooted a few months later, causing the New 52 and causing Kaldur to disappear. DC Comics, because good choices are for suckers. I'll discuss Connor and McGann together because of the effect that they have on one another. Both are outsiders, new to this world, and kind of uncomfortable with themselves and their identities. When they strike up a romance, they reveal who they really are, both powerhouses but with hearts of gold. Despite this, they both seem to hide an aspect of these personalities. Connor doesn't show his sweet nature. Despite this, it's kinda obvious with the subtle befriending of a sentient sphere and a roided-out wolf. McGann also tries to hide her own powers, but it clearly becomes evident that she even surpasses Martian Manhunter in telepathic abilities. In the beginning, they seem like polar opposites, but by the end, McGann is comfortable with her strength and true appearance as a white Martian, while Connor now allows himself to feel and begins a healthy relationship with his sorta dad, Superman. As a couple, they bring out the best in each other, and they'd probably get my vote for cutest couple. If it weren't for our last two team members, that is. Artemis is shown to come from a crappy family of criminals. In an attempt to distance herself from her heritage, she sought out Green Arrow's help in trying to find a place for her. Not only did she find an outlet for all her potential heroism, but also find a family where she could actually be herself for maybe the first time in her life, and also one where she truly felt loved. And speaking of love, we reach our final main cast member, Kid Flash, aka Wally West. Oh, what can be said about Wally West? Easily my favorite character on the show, Wally stands in for Bart Allen, who was Kid Flash in the Young Justice comic. Wally starts off the series as a snarky, girl-obsessed teenager, who despite respecting authority, didn't mind cracking wise every now and again. And by now and again, I mean all the time. I have no idea why I can relate. Over the course of the show, Wally is shown to grow up immensely, toning down the girl fixation and taking his job more seriously. That said, he still cracks wise and spouts one-liners whenever he can. The romance between Artemis and Wally was underplayed throughout the season, with bickering like an old couple throughout, and subtle nods to possible feelings, and it was finally confirmed in the season finale. And there was much rejoicing. Now, if you haven't been able to tell, I love this show. Everything about it.
Their master strategist? Moi.
The more we get to have our jollies.
Except that. I joke, but this is really, truly an amazing show. The gripping storyline with twists and turns, the three-dimensional characters which continue to be fleshed out as the show goes on, the stunning animation that goes into every single action sequence, all of it. I cannot recommend this show enough. Honestly, if you've yet to see it, drop everything and go now. And if you have seen it, drop everything and go watch it again. It's more than worth it. Next time, we'll be concluding Animation Month, so stay tuned. Until then, as always, thank you for joining me and I'll see you next time. This is the Watcher of New Earth, signing off.